Hello and welcome to Simply Cyber Live. I'm your host, Gerald Auger, and every Thursday we talk with experts to help you take your cyber career further, faster. Today I'm pleased to be joined by a friend of the show, Jon Helmuth. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Glad to be here.
Oh yeah. So today we're talking about cybersecurity certifications. We called the episode Cybersecurity Roadmap because Jon and I were talking about it, and cybersecurity certifications are kind of a real hot button topic within the industry because the questions you get from people who are trying to get into the industry or in college or high school, and is it worth it? Which ones do I get? I feel like I get that question more often than not. What's the right certification for me to get? And, we wanted to dedicate this show to answering those questions and really answering the questions that I feel a lot of the more middle tier, senior tier people in the industry ask around, why do these job postings say, I need this certification, but it makes no sense for this position. And there's a lot of entanglements with that and the salary requirements and all those things. So I thought today we might start off with opening statements from myself and from Jon, and then we have some prepared questions that we will answer. But please, as the little scrolling Chiron says on the bottom, we want this show to be engaging. We are streaming on both YouTube and LinkedIn Live right now. So if you got a question, if you got a comment, drop it in the box below and let us know what you want to talk about, because this is what we're here for. So opening statements, I will defer to Jon. Jon, what are your thoughts around cybersecurity certifications in general?
I think they're a great way to, when you're first starting out, they're a great way to help kind of give you a roadmap into the field that you want to get into. So, when you're starting out and looking at, IT or cybersecurity or anything from the outside in, you typically want to look at certain positions that fit the attributes that that you would like, and you need to look at the certifications that fit those positions. So getting those certifications is a great way for you to kind of walk your way up the ladder. They're also a great way to just complement your skill set as you grow as a professional. Even once, you're in this career field, you never stop learning. So even once you get to a certain point where you don't necessarily need to get a certification to, get to that next level or, to make a lateral move to another position, it's still a good thing to do just to maintain and update your skill set, because let's get real, technology's always evolving, right? So certifications just play a great way of growing your career and your skill set.
I agree 100%. So my opening thoughts, and by the way, we're getting like pretty good engagement here from the audience participation. So really appreciate that right out the gate. For me, my opening thoughts, I've always been an advocate of certifications. I feel to your point, you really need to continue to develop yourself as a professional. As you go through your career, you don't know everything, especially in a field like ours where technology changes regularly. If you just look at cloud computing as a perfect example, if you know how to run a data center, you've been doing that for 30 years, those techniques and concepts don't apply to a cloud infrastructure. And if you're going to be stubborn and just kind of ram your techniques in there because you're 50 years old and you can't be taught anything, it's not going to work. So you have to have a little bit of humility. You have to have a little bit of appreciation that things change and that you can always learn. Now, I love one of the things that I love most about certifications, and unfortunately, I know they get a bad rap. But one of the things I love about certifications is it doesn't matter if you dropped out of high school and you're just wicked good at hacking and offensive sec, and you got a 6-figure job working for IBM because you're just absolutely elite, or you went more traditional college approach and did all these other things. If you have the CISSP and I have the CISSP, you and I can have a conversation because there's a basic foundation that we have both basically proven that we've got the knowledge and we were able to test it to demonstrate it. And I feel like that when I look at certifications, certainly there are very specific ones, right? So like, maybe like an advanced forensics investigator, like that's a really specific skill. And we're going to get into that later about these really specialized certs. But when I see these more general practitioner ones, it tells me, okay, this is where that individual is professionally. Now, you could still be there without the certification. As you see, a lot of people later on in their career will let their certs lapse because they no longer provide any value from getting a job perspective. They have a network already and they have a resume that can get them work. But you'll sometimes see them put it on the resume still and just say like, there's a term that people put like void or no longer active or something like that. Inactive, I think they put. Yeah. So anyways, those are my thoughts. It sounds like audience, you're going to get a pro certification show today. So those are the things. We do have some prepared questions, but I'd rather just jump right into some of the audience ones. So Cheyenne asked a really good one here. Cheyenne, friend of the show from last week, she wanted our thoughts on CISA versus CISSP. And good afternoon to you, Cheyenne, too. So, John, if you want, I hold both of these certifications, so I feel I could probably respond to this one. Yeah,
I'll let you take that one. Yeah.
So we probably should have started. We can do this afterwards. But I hold a CISSP, I hold a CISA, I hold a CISM, I hold a Security Plus. I also hold an RFID certification from a security perspective. So if you're interested in doing some of that action, but okay, so Cheyenne, to your point, CISA and CISSP, I actually don't feel that these two certifications are apples to apples, right? So CISSP is your kind of standard, in my opinion, it's your standard professional security benchmark certification. Once you get that, you've kind of progressed from a junior level role. You could be a middle tier, you could be a senior tier, but for me, you've committed 5 years at least to the discipline. You're specialized likely in some aspect of that field, and you're a security professional. You're not dabbling in security. You're a security professional. That is what I think of when I see CISSP on a resume or on someone's business card or whatever. CISA is the ISACA certification. And it's specifically, it's not specific, but it's super targeted for auditing of systems from a security audit perspective. So if you're going to go into audit, federal audit, system audit, PCI, those type of things, that is really what that certification is more focused on getting you familiar with, like the techniques for auditing and data collection and, what systems look like and how to pull out, not evidence, but how to, run audits basically. So that's really the uniqueness of that one. I was an auditor for several years. I got this certification. I thought it was a very, a worthwhile certification. I have thoughts about ISACA that we can talk about later, but let's keep on going. This one, Nitric CDX asks about SANS certs to get into network forensics. So before we answer your question, let's talk about certifications for a second. They're not all priced the same, right? So John and I talked about this in the green room before the show started. If you are familiar with SANS certification, they are easily, I don't know of another more expensive certification.
Down payment on a house.
Yeah. So I think SANS certs, usually you usually have to go to the training, right? And that's usually like $7,000 or $8,000. And then the certs are fairly expensive. I have a crosswalk over here and I could pull it up. But John, do you have any thoughts around SANS or SANS certs or network forensics ones?
I haven't looked. I don't actually have any experience with the digital forensics certs with SANS, but and I don't hold any SANS certs. I've read some of the coursework for SANS 660, and then which goes for the GXPN certification through them, and then I've also read the I can't remember the course title, but it's the coursework that follows with the GP or the GPEN, the GPEN, and that's pretty much as much as I have in line with them. However, to your point, if you're trying to dive into a SANS cert, that's a really big investment. And if you're paying out of pocket, which a lot of people do, you really got to make sure that if there is a return on investment for you, rather that's going to be in a raise, a promotion, or if you just really, really want the knowledge, there is self-gratification in that return on investment, where it's just, you feel happy with the knowledge that you obtained, right? And if that's good enough for you, then you got a good return on your investment. However, we typically say the return on investment is monetary, and we want money and a raise or something like that. So
yeah, and I would agree with you 100%. If you can get your employer to foot the bill for SANS cert, absolutely. And to your point, really, I just Googled this one. It's the GNFA cert. I was trying to figure out who actually was one of the instructors, because I will tell you, SANS is expensive. It's not $8,000, by the way. According to Wikipedia, it is $2,000. And then it's $2,000 to take the exam, and then $430 to maintain it. But here's the thing. SANS is expensive because SANS is the best, right? Yeah. So you can get a good quality training and education, but like everybody knows SANS, like if you have SANS education, then you probably got a really good education if you paid attention and did that. So, to your point, Nitrick, if you're looking to get a network forensics job, then, that would be an investment in yourself, I guess is the best way to put it. So thank you. We'll just spend a minute on this one because it's not really certification related. Stuart asked, what do we think about going for a full PhD since I have one and John's going to have one pretty soon. So, I think PhD is definitely outside the realm of certification easily, right? So certification, you can compartmentalize and do it and then be done with it in 3 months or whatever and move on to the next thing. A PhD is way more of a lifestyle commitment. It changes everything. And I really would only recommend PhDs or really any type of terminal degree to anyone. You have to be absolutely passionate about the field way beyond work, right? It's got to be a lifestyle.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I actually remember when I was finishing up my my master's thesis, and I was discussing with one of my professors to get a PhD, and I was talking to him about it, and his exact words, I'll never forget, is some decent advice that goes right with what you're saying. Is he said, if you do that, you're going to be dedicating your life to that subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are known as an authority on it, really. So we got a question here from Angela Ma. Hey, Angela. And she asked a question that I wanted to discuss. We talked about this pre-show about something to talk about. This is a major problem in our industry. And if Joe Hudson's still here, here he is. If Joe has some thoughts on this too, I'd love him to chime in, and maybe we could throw it up on the screen. So Angela asks, there's like these entry-level positions, right? But then they require you to have 5 years of experience and a master's degree and like a really, 4 years in forensics. And it's completely wrong. And what is the problem with, what is the deal with this? So, John, do you have any thoughts around this particular issue? Because this is a major issue within cybersecurity.
Yeah. A lot of cyber jobs, for one, aren't entry-level positions, so to speak. Not saying that you can't get your foot right in the door, but a lot of them, you do need to have some basic fundamental experience in the field, right? Something that you're not going to get from, learning from textbooks or listening from lectures. You're actually going to have to get hands on keyboard in front of faces and be in the business process, all that good stuff. And and I think there's a lack of terminology there. I think it's because a lot of, these job postings are put out by recruiters, right? Because the recruiters see the recruiters or HR sees what needs to be put out, and they say, okay, well, you got to have this, and that. However, if say you need to get an entry-level cyber position that has, it says you need 2 to 3 years of experience, and you need to have Security Plus. Basically what they're saying is that you need to have at least 2 to 3 years of some kind of technical experience, rather that be on a help desk or as a sysadmin or whatever, or even if you're doing some kind of lightweight security work. And then they want to just have a certification, because that if they list something like Security Plus, that means that you might be doing something where they need you to have that cert because it falls in line with some kind of accreditation process. It also shows that you have, some kind of competency in that subject, because not to go back on this on the PhD thing, but when we look at degrees, a school offering a cyber degree, here in Washington might have a totally different curriculum than where you are over in South Carolina, right? So they're not able to baseline, okay, well, you have to have a bachelor's degree in this. They just say security plus because it's a globally accredited body, right? And it's the same everywhere. So they're gonna use that as like saying, okay, they at least know this portion. However, you do see those you see those job postings where they say, the help desk position, you need CISSP. You see that, or you see 4 years of experience doing this and this and that. And while that doesn't fall in line in cyber, if you find a job like that with a company, I'm not saying steer clear of them, but that means that they probably don't have all their ducks in a row just yet, and they're still figuring out the terminology of how they're going to recruit people. So,
yeah. And so to piggyback on that, Angela, you specifically asked Sec Plus or SSCP, which is like the CISSP light, or the more junior experienced of a CISSP. Personally, and I'm going to bring up a comment Pete Strauss, who's another recruiter friend of mine, mentioned here in a second, but just to answer your question plainly, I would recommend you get Sec Plus. Okay. So secondly, as far as the experience goes, things are evolving within our industry, but traditionally it was always like you came from IT or you came from software development. And that's basically how you got into security. You didn't start in security. You transitioned in. So when they have these really unrealistic expectations of years of experience for an entry level, I think that's where they're getting that logic from. Having said that, I think it's completely unfair to bill it as an entry level position, pay it like salary wise at an entry level position when clearly it's not an entry level role. And I think that's one of the things that's a problem. And just to, this is the message that Pete Strauss said. He's a recruiter friend of mine who recruits within information security. Sec Plus is a great place to start. It's more about gaining relevant related experience, though. He says he's got hiring managers looking for SOC analysts and they want foundational IT. So again, that's kind of the rub, Angela, is that there is some expectation. Like cybersecurity isn't entirely technical, but it really, you need to understand like basically how a network works. You don't have to understand like routing protocols and smart tree algorithms and stuff like that. Like, but you need to understand like what an IP address is and how a client server communication thing works, and probably some of the more popular protocols like or TCP/IP, and then some of the higher level protocols and how they work. So hopefully that answered your question. We're getting some good ones here.
Yeah, I wanted to just add one more thing. It's just one little bullet point to that is the other, like mentioning like understanding IP stuff and working on a help desk. And even in my experience, I started out as a help desk guy, underestimated, underspoken kind of thing to talk about is networking. Always expand your network.
Like professional network.
Yeah, heavily rely on your network, because that'll help push you forward into cyber.
Yeah. So to that point, connect with me on LinkedIn. My DMs are open, if you will. Anyways, Angela. So the IT stuff is good. Okay. So speaking of SANS 504 for blue teamers, I pulled this one up. This is a basic foundational blue team course that SANS is offering. I couldn't find who's teaching it or what the costs are, but anonymous LinkedIn user. My only thoughts for this would be this is probably not going to be well received by SANS, but for foundational blue team stuff, there is so much out there that is nicely packaged and way less expensive than SANS. I would use SANS more for a advanced skill where you're really going to get in there and understand it. I just check my LinkedIn profile. I just posted earlier today. John Strand from Black Hills, who's like really well known, kind of a legend in the field, is actually doing a 4-day pay what you feel it's worth training on effectively like blue team, red team stuff. So, for a couple $100, I mean, really for zero, but you probably should pay a couple $100. Like you can get like a really good 4-day training. So I would look for other options besides an entry level education personally. So let's see. We got Chris Bradley. I haven't even read this one. For the DoD sector, review the 8570 baseline certs. Oh yeah, this is a great point, and one that I wanted to make to Angela. Thanks, Christopher Bradley, for mentioning this. So if you get that Sec Plus while you're in college or still haven't gotten your first job or whatever, like you can go get a job working for a DoD contractor, and because you have that, you qualify into that, kind of tier 1 role. I forget what they call it, but it's like a analyst 1 role. And there you go. And usually those DoD contractors are set up in such a way that you've got middle tier and senior tier people there to kind of groom you. And some of the bigger ones, like I worked at Booz Allen for a bit, and they have protocols and procedures all in place to get you kind of straight. So you're not like day one trying to figure out what you're doing, Yeah. So, this one's a good one for you, John. Upworth asks, what are your thoughts on specific practical certs for blue team, red team, like e-learning security or e-learn security, offensive security when compared to certs type questions? So since John is the offensive guy, I'll let him take this.
All right. So my thoughts, I hold the OSCP. I also hold an e-learn security cert, as well as some CompTIA certs and EC Council certs. So, they both play really, really well in building your foundation to help you, push your career forward. However, if I were to have to, pick one, I would go with e-learn security and offensive security, because you're still going to learn the material that you would in CompTIA and EC Council. It's the only difference is that, for CompTIA, you're going to be questioned based on the fundamentals, and you're going to have to remember those fundamentals, as opposed to with e-learn security and offensive security, you're going to have to apply them. And when you apply them, it's more muscle memory sometimes rather than actually remembering the fundamental basics of how SSH works or how the TCP handshake works or something like that. However, that being said, it's also not always a smart idea to jump right into those hands-on certs, such as like OSCP. That's a cert that you could spend 6 months to a year on. And while it's a great cert to have, it's a fantastic cert. If you want to have something to help, bridge your way there, I would go for like things like CompTIA, EC Council. I have Security Plus and Pentest Plus by CompTIA, and those are two really good exams that have helped build my my foundational security database in my head, so to speak. And Pentest Plus, actually, I took that last year, and that's actually a very, very good non-practical exam. They did a very good job of making it as practical as possible with scenarios in the questions. And then EC Council, CEH is going to be one of those exams that, when you pass and you get your certification, it falls in line with the DoD. So if you want to do like offensive security for the DoD, you have to have CEH. And then even CEH now actually has a practical version where you actually can apply everything that you learned in the non-practical one and apply it in I think it's a 6-hour exam, if I remember. I took that last year as well. And it's question-based, but you do things to answer the questions, so to speak. So they give you an environment, you have to hack that. So to conclude that, I would say go for at least a CompTIA cert and an EC Council cert. EC Council is kind of like SANS. They tend to be a little bit expensive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're on a budget, I would recommend going more the CompTIA route. And then going to eLearn Security, maybe do a cert by them. They have a couple really good penetration testing certs, and then jumping into the offensive security realm.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks, John. So, we talked about a lot of different certifications, and really quick, I want to pause for a minute and thank the people in the audience, because I'm seeing a lot of people help other people answer things and share resources. So this is fantastic. This is beyond what my expectations were. So I'm gonna bring up a diagram really quick, because I think it's really useful. And so I know you might not be able to see it fully, but this is basically a crosswalk, and I'll share the, this is the URL, which is totally not readable. I'll share this in the comments in a minute here. But this crosswalk basically shows many, if not most of the cybersecurity certifications that are currently available in the industry. Somebody on Reddit, he got a ton of love for putting this together, but it breaks it horizontally from entry-level, novice to professional, from bottom up, and then from left to right, it's really on focused disciplines. So security management, architecture, analysis. There's the red team stuff, the blue team stuff. So you can kind of map out your career. And granted, yes, the 8570 is great if you want to try to just kind of grow within the federal IT space and get an idea. But if you're looking for, okay, I've got X amount of dollars my employer is going to spend, and I want to get a certification, and maybe I've heard of a couple, but I don't know what they all are. You can use this diagram to kind of put your arms around it and figure out what is going on. And they're kind of stacked on level of skill. So you can see, hopefully you can see this, like OSCP is way up here. And as John just alluded to, or explicitly stated, like that's a really demanding course that takes a lot out of you and takes months and months to prepare for. And even then you're not guaranteed to walk through it. So I'd like you guys to all, know about this and use it as a reference. And I'll make this available, the URL here in a few minutes or after the show. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that up and share it. Keep the questions coming. So let me ask a question that we had prepped, and then I'll look at the comments. So John, one of the questions that Joe Hudson provided me yesterday, or we kind of talked about, was, the OSCP, you see this on, like we just talked about how difficult the OSCP is, but you see it on job recs all over the place. And it's like, how is market that like unrealistic to think that there's OSCPs running around everywhere when they have it? And then to make it even worse, it'll be like a web app penetration testing position, like 100% web app testing. And it's asking for OSCP versus a more focused certification like GWeb or GWAP. What are your thoughts around that particular challenge?
Yeah, I think with, OSCP has been kind of like the offensive security standard for the past, 5-10 years, however long. And there's a lot of new web application certs, coming about. Offensive security just released a web application cert this past year. eLearn Security, who is becoming, kind of a competitor with offensive security, they have their own web application certifications as well as SANS. However, as we've talked about, not everybody gets SANS just because of the budget constraints. So the reason why I see it, OSCP has the standard that's still being produced, even for these web application positions, is because OSCP teaches you the methodology of how to hack, right? It teaches you how to do proper recon, enumeration, how to do proper, RCEs, which actually relates directly to web application security, right? You learn how to use Burp Suite, learn how to use basic web application security tools, just not in a deep dive. However, as someone who's gone to the OSCP exam twice, you do a lot of web hacking, so to speak. And while I can't disclose anything about the exam, obviously, you do a lot of web hacking in the exam and in the labs. And it's a lot of fundamental, basic web hacking, but it's still there. And I think that's what employers are looking for. The other thing is too, is that when you're going to the OSCP, it's not even a cert, or it is a cert. I'm sorry, but it's not even it's not a study. You're not studying for a cert. It's almost like you're transitioning into this different person, because OSCP, it's one of those things where you study 2 to 4, 6 hours a day, and then you take the exam. And the exam, for those of you who don't know, is a 24-hour exam, followed by 24 hours to write a report. So if you fail it, you got to do another 24-hour exam. So it's kind of like one of those things where, you were thrown into the fire and you made your way out, and employers from the outside looking in, they see that and they say, okay, well, we know this people who have this cert, they have a basic web application pen testing methodology built in their head. They also understand system hacking. They understand, all the what's and buts about ethical hacking. Let's bring them on board, and then we'll train them to do web app pen testing how we want them to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great points. So one thing I wanted to make sure that we talked about today was what I call, be aware, be cautious of specialized certs. So when I ran through what my certification, golf bag was full of, I didn't mention CCNA. I have a CCNA. I do not tell anyone I have a CCNA. I do not put it on my resume. I don't, short of this, private audience on the internet, I don't talk about it. And the reason is because I took a boot camp. We could talk about boot camps too later if there's time. But I took a boot camp and hammered through it. Did it on Friday. Took the test on Saturday. Got a 98 on the exam. Boom, I'm certed. Here's the thing. I wasn't a network engineer, right? I understand networks. I have a computer science background. That's fine. But CCNA is the Cisco, iOS. They had iOS before Apple did. It's the Cisco operating system on how to manage their networking devices, and the device itself, plus how to build network trees and redundancy and, all these other specific, very network engineer focused things. Well, guess what, guys? I'm not a network engineer. I'm a security professional who needs to understand networks, and I work with the networking people quite a bit, but I don't need to be able to log into the router and do their job. So because of that, I don't, within 3 months, I barely know how to log into the thing, let alone configure it, right? So if you spend money on specialized certs, or you're seeking that, whatever, like you said earlier, someone asked about forensics, right? So if you get specialized in using Ncase, which is one of the, kind of most it's a top popular forensics tool that organizations use. You learn Ncase, and then you go work in an FTK shop or an autopsy shop or something like that. Yeah, you still got the skills and you probably can relate them, but it's going to be tough to use Ncase a year from now. And if you're saying that you're certified in Ncase, there's kind of an expectation that you can use it. Now, it's probably a bad example, because if you're doing forensics, it's just a tool to do the job. But if you got Ncase and then you went and did auditing for 2 years, security auditing, and you still had Ncase on your resume, that's a more egregious example where you don't, yes, you're certified, but you're not really competent in the skill. So it's kind of, I just want people to be aware of spending the money, investing the time, and then seeking a job in a different direction, and then letting that kind of, die on the vine, if you will. So, all right, let's check out the questions here. We have a lot of great resources that I'm just going to throw up because we have two kind of comment streams going right now. But who is it? I think Pete dropped one earlier about differ.training for forensics. Oh gosh, where is it? All right, well, Gabriel brings Pentester Lab. Isn't a certification, but gives you those skills, gives you those opportunity to kind of hack stuff. I haven't played with that myself. I don't know if you have, John.
Oh yeah, every day.
Okay. Yeah, so we got the differ training. Pete shared that. I think this is Brett Shavers, who's a big digital forensics expert in the space, who provides all sorts of that training. So there is a lot of good resources out there for people to take advantage of. Any thoughts around? I mentioned briefly boot camp. So what I'll just say really quick. There's really two ways that people go about. There's three ways that people go about getting certs. One, they do a boot camp and they just cram their brain, and then they take the cert, which is fine if you need it, like to get the job, and you're going to be doing that work anyways. There's reasons to do it. Two, there's like studying and getting the book and working through exercises and labs. This is the more traditional approach, and then taking it. And then there's the third way, which I have done because I'm insane, where you just schedule yourself for the exam and show up because you're curious to see what it would be like. I did that with the CISSP. Oh, I have that too. I forgot to mention that too. I did that like a couple years ago with the CISSP because I had like a free afternoon. I was like, oh, that'd be fun. Go get this thing. Work paid for it. So, but anyways, to speak with the boot camp area, what are your thoughts around boot camps and the effectiveness of them or the utility of them? John?
Yeah, it depends. If your employer is paying for it, they're paying for it because, you have to have a cert to get to the next level. Or you see in the DOD, you see those Security Plus boot camps all over the place. And if any of you have ever sat in on a Security Plus boot camp or ever go to one, 75% of your class are DOD security people because they have to have that certification to operate on a network. Mm-hmm. So there's that instance where you're gonna, and you can use that example for anything, where you have to get it for a job, right? And you're gonna study based on if you need to cram or if you actually want to, be competent in the, there's a difference between memorizing terminology because CompTIA or EC Council, everyone has a way of how they ask questions and you learn how to look for those keywords. And so there's a difference between knowing how to pass the exam and being competent, right? Or just throwing up a Hail Mary and just saying, screw it and going and taking the exam. And, so with boot camps, I think they try to kind of meet all of that all together, at least the ones that I've seen, because I personally haven't been to a boot camp, heard the stories, but it looks like what they give you your material enough ahead to where, you have time to study, and then you go and you take it. You go to the boot camp for 2 weeks, however long it is, right? And then you schedule your exam. Sometimes your exam is in the boot camp, or you do it out, the next week, right? And and that's the traditional style of boot camps that I've seen. However, it's all up to you, the IT professional, if you want to, just say, well, screw it. I'll cram the week of and I'll take the exam and I pass or I don't pass. Or you take it and you say, okay, I actually want to learn all the material in this. I'm going to study for the next couple months before the boot camp and then go and crush the exam.
Yeah.
Or, just take the exam.
I've seen a lot of people who are ready for the exam, but they lack the confidence. So they'll take a boot camp just to reaffirm them to themselves that they're ready to do that. I've seen that. I've also seen if you have an opportunity, this is just a pro tip. I've taken several boot camps. If you could find out who the instructor is going to be and find out anyone who may have worked with that instructor in the past, a terrible instructor can, really ruin a boot camp and just make the learning terrible and ineffective and stuff like that. So just, whatever, do some due diligence if you can on your boot camps. So, all right. Well, John, any final thoughts? I think we're going to be wrapping it up here.
While everyone here is, if you're on the outside looking in and trying to get a certification and you're chasing that certification for money, to get a raise or get a promotion, try not to do that because you'll make it into a habit. Go for the knowledge, and let your passion drive your knowledge and the money will follow.
Yeah, great. Well said. Well said. So, we had a wonderful audience today. Special thanks to John for being here and running this panel with me. I had a lot of fun. We do this every Thursday at 4:30. So check the invites, and really appreciate it. Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.